The galaxy held its breath. Months of tension had passed since humanity's true origins were revealed. Entire empires had realized that the young race they once overlooked was in fact older than any of them. Humans had awoken powers long forgotten, and the balance of the galaxy was shifting. But still, humans did not move to conquer. They explored, studied, and learned. They reconnected with the ruins of their ancestors, awakening machines, starships, and knowledge that had been silent for millions of years. The galaxy, however, was not patient. The final warning, a coalition of alien powers, the Drakari, the Xerics, and several smaller empires sent an ultimatum. Humanity must surrender all ruins and ancient technology, or face a combined assault of fleets capable of destroying dozens of worlds. On Earth, Aiden Cross read the message, feeling the weight of history pressing down. The galaxy demanded humans bow or be crushed. He looked at his team. Mirarina and the other researchers had worked tirelessly for months, uncovering secrets older than any record. They had activated ancient systems, learned the ways of the first builders, and connected the dots across countless worlds. They think they can stop us, Aiden said softly, but they do not understand. The galaxy has already answered, and we are its inheritors. Awakening the ancient machines, human scientists and explorers activated the oldest of the ruins. Massive starships, long dormant, rose from hidden bays. Energy fields silent for millions of years hummed and flared. Devices that had guided ancient civilizations began moving in perfect coordination. Aliens across the galaxy observed in shock. Fleets prepared for attack suddenly found entire systems moving against them, not with human firepower alone, but with machines that remembered commands from their first masters. On a distant desert world, a Xerix admiral watched as a fleet of ancient human ships rose into orbit. Their silver hulls gleamed, weapons charged, and shields activated. "Impossible," the admiral whispered. They are commanding the ancients themselves." Indeed, it was true. Humanity's touch activated systems designed for their ancestors, and no alien species could replicate the command. The galaxy had underestimated the first race, the first battle. The aliens launched the first strike, hoping to crush humans before they could consolidate power. They descended on one of Earth's outer colonies with hundreds of ships. The humans, however, had learned the ways of the ruins. Ancient energy fields rose across planets, preventing ships from landing. Automated starships moved in perfect formation, guided by humans who had never fought before but now acted with the instinct of their ancestors. Weapons fired. Shields held. Alien ships, advanced as they were outmatched by technology millions of years older. Fleets broke apart, retreating in confusion. For the first time, the galaxy saw it clearly. Humanity was not a race to be challenged. Humans were the first builders returned, and the ancients had remembered their own children. Fear and realization. News of the battle spread like wildfire. Alien civilizations that had once considered humans insignificant now trembled. Propaganda no longer worked. Entire fleets that had been mobilized to strike Earth were recalled. In secret councils, leaders admitted the truth. Humans were not only ancient, they had the power of the first builders at their command. To attack was futile. To challenge them would be suicide. Ilarians, known for their wisdom, sent envoys to Earth, bowing not in subjugation but in respect. "The galaxy has awakened to its true history," they said, "and humanity stands at its center." Even the Drakari, fierce and proud, could not deny it. They had witnessed the rise of ancient machines, the coordination of long-dormant fleets, and humans who acted with the instinct of their forebears. Humanity's choice. Despite the power at their fingertips, humans made a choice that stunned the galaxy. They did not use their technology to conquer, nor to punish those who had doubted them. Aiden addressed the Council of Earth and representatives from allied races. "Our ancestors built these wonders not to rule but to protect. Humanity's role is not to dominate the galaxy but to guide it, to understand it and to ensure balance. We will defend ourselves if attacked, but we will not strike first." The galaxy listened. Many were relieved. Some remained suspicious, but even the most skeptical could not deny the evidence of the ancient systems. Humans reached out to other races, offering knowledge, partnerships, and guidance. Ancient maps were shared. Stargates were activated for trade and exploration. Ruins were studied together. Slowly, the galaxy began to see humans not as conquerors, but as stewards of a forgotten legacy. Rebuilding trust, humans traveled to alien worlds, repairing damage from previous conflicts and sharing their discoveries. Alien scientists and engineers joined human teams to study ancient machines. Slowly, trust grew. Even those who had once sought to attack humanity began to change. They realized that the first builder's legacy was too vast for one race alone. Cooperation, not conquest, was the path forward. Aiden watched as humans and aliens worked side by side, exploring ruins on distant worlds. He marveled at how quickly alliances formed once fear was replaced by understanding. Mira smiled at him. "We came back," she said quietly, "and we did not need to fight to take our place." Aiden nodded. "Our ancestors left us a legacy," he replied. "It is not ours to wield for power, it is ours to honor. And when the galaxy sees that, they will remember us for what we truly are." Legacy rekindled in the years that followed. Humanity's role became clear. They were the original architects of the galaxy, the first explorers, the ancient ones who had once shaped worlds. But they had also become teachers, guardians, and partners. Ruins across the galaxy were studied. Machines were restored. Systems that had been silent for millions of years hummed once more, guided by human hands. The aliens, once fearful, came to respect humans not only for their power, but for their restraint. Humanity's patience, wisdom, and fairness became legendary. The final revelation in the Chamber of Stars. Aiden stood alone one night. The constellations above glowed softly, ancient maps stretching across the walls. He placed his hand on a central pedestal, feeling the hum of energy beneath his fingers. Images appeared, ships of silver, worlds of light, guardians watching over countless civilizations. The message from millions of years ago echoed clearly in his mind. One day our children will return. And when they do, the galaxy will remember who came first. Aiden smiled. Humanity had returned. The galaxy had learned the truth. It was too late to deny them. Too late to challenge the first race. Too late to pretend that humans were young, inexperienced, or insignificant. The galaxy would never forget again. A new era, peaceful alliances formed across stars. Humans and aliens worked together to explore ruins, unlock ancient technology, and rediscover knowledge long lost. Humanity's role was clear: to guide, protect, and teach. The first race had awakened, not to conquer, but to restore balance. And in doing so, they had transformed the galaxy forever. From Earth to the farthest star systems, the legacy of humanity spread. They were the builders, the guardians, the ancient ones. And all the civilizations of the galaxy understood one simple truth. The first race had returned, and it was too late. The Hall of Radiance was filled with light. Thousands of beings from across the stars had gathered to hear their ruler speak. The queen of the Seraphin Empire was a towering figure of silver and pale blue, her crown made of glowing crystals that shimmered with every movement. To her people, she was more than a ruler. She was a living symbol of eternity, wisdom, and strength. The Seraphin had ruled for centuries, and their queen was believed to be above all weakness. She stood at the grand podium, her voice echoing across the hall. Her words promised unity, peace, and strength for the Empire. Delegates from dozens of alien races listened in silence. The queen's presence commanded respect. Some whispered that she had never shown a single sign of aging or illness in all her reign. To her people, she was eternal, but then the impossible happened. The queen's voice cracked mid-sentence. Her hand reached for her chest, her radiant eyes widened, and her tall frame shuddered. The hall gasped in shock as their immortal leader staggered. A cry rose from the crowd when she fell to her knees. For the first time in memory, the queen of the Seraphin looked fragile. Panic spread. Advisors rushed forward. Medical officers equipped with advanced healing devices ran to her side. Guards formed a protective circle as the audience shouted in fear and disbelief. No one could understand what they had just seen. The queen's body was lowered carefully onto a levitating stretcher, her crown slipping to the floor. Healers activated scanners that glowed across her chest, showing strange pulses of light, but their expressions were troubled. They did not understand. The word no Seraphin expected to hear was spoken in hushed tones. Her heart. It had stopped. In the shadows of the hall, one guard stood silently watching. His name was Daniel Ward, a human soldier who had been assigned as part of the Queen's protective detail. Among the towering Seraphin warriors with shining armor, Daniel looked plain and almost out of place. His uniform was simple, his weapons not as advanced, and his body not as tall or strong. Many of the alien guards looked down on him, considering him more symbolic than useful. But Daniel's eyes were sharp and his instincts keen. He had seen soldiers collapse before, on battlefields, in training camps, even in peaceful cities. The way the Queen had clutched her chest was familiar. He had seen that gesture on Earth. A memory came back to him. His own grandfather had fallen in a similar way. Back then, the doctors had called it a heart attack. The Seraphin healers carried the Queen away quickly, followed by a flood of advisors and officials. The audience was dismissed in panic, their whispers filling the air like restless waves. Daniel stayed at his post, watching, thinking. Hours later, the palace was in chaos. Rumors spread through every corridor. Some claimed the Queen had been poisoned. Others whispered about assassination attempts. A few even suggested divine punishment for some unknown failure. Ministers argued about security. Generals prepared defenses, and envoys worried about the Empire's stability. The Queen was not just a leader, she was the pillar of order. If she was weak, the entire Empire might crumble. Daniel was assigned to guard one of the outer chambers. He could hear voices from the medical hall beyond the heavy doors. The Seraphin healers were speaking in their musical language, but the tone was unmistakable. Confusion. Despite their advanced knowledge, they did not understand what had happened. Her vitals are unstable, one said. The heart functions have ceased, another replied. But this should be impossible. Our kind does not suffer such failures. Daniel frowned. Impossible? No, not impossible. Humans had seen it countless times. He thought again of his grandfather, of the doctors who had rushed, of the medicine, of the machines. What the Seraphin saw as a mystery was, to him, frighteningly familiar. The next morning, an emergency council was called. Leaders of different races gathered in a grand chamber. The Seraphin ministers stood tall, trying to appear calm, but their voices betrayed worry. The Queen lies unconscious, the High Minister said. Her life is not yet lost, but the cause is unknown. Until we understand, we must increase security and prepare for all outcomes. Many spoke at once. Some suggested blaming enemies. Others demanded an investigation into food supplies and air systems. A few even accused rival empires of sabotage. Daniel remained silent, standing among the guards. But his mind was restless. None of them were considering the simple truth. None of them had even spoken the words, heart attack. They acted as if the concept did not exist. Perhaps it truly did not exist for them. He thought about saying something, but stopped. He was a human guard, one voice among giants. Would they even listen? Later that day, Daniel was ordered to patrol near the Queen's private chambers. Only a few trusted guards were allowed near, and he was surprised to be among them. Inside the chamber, the Queen rested on a shimmering bed of light, surrounded by healing machines that pulsed with soft energy. Her chest rose and fell faintly, her face pale but still dignified. Advisors spoke quietly. The machines keep her alive, but we cannot heal what we cannot name. Daniel stepped closer, studying her. His eyes wandered to the side table near the Queen's bed. There, hidden among ceremonial items, he noticed something small and ordinary, an empty container, metallic and simple. He recognized the brand. It was human-made, a snack box often sold by Earth traders. His thoughts sharpened. Why would the Queen have such a thing? Did she eat it recently? Could it be connected? He said nothing, but inside a spark of suspicion grew. That night, while most of the palace slept, Daniel stood alone on guard duty. The silence was heavy. He looked at the stars through the tall crystal windows, thinking about the day's events. The Seraphin believed their Queen could not fall ill. They trusted only in their advanced machines. But perhaps that was the problem. Perhaps they had overlooked the simplest explanation. Daniel's heart beat faster. He remembered his grandfather again, and how the doctors had said, too much sugar, too much stress, too much strain. Could it be that simple? Could something as ordinary as human food, harmless to him, be deadly to a being like the Queen? He whispered to himself, it wasn't magic. It wasn't poison. It was something no one here understands. In that moment, Daniel realized he might be the only one who could solve this mystery. The fate of the Queen, and perhaps the entire Empire, might depend on the knowledge of a single human guard. The next day, whispers grew louder across the Empire. Fleets prepared for war, fearing enemies would strike if the Queen died. Citizens panicked, markets shook, and alliances trembled. But within the palace walls, one quiet human carried a secret thought. The queen did not fall because of an enemy's weapon. She fell because of something hidden, something ordinary, and only Daniel might have the key to the truth, to be continued. The palace was restless. Guards marched through shining halls, advisors spoke in hurried voices, and healers moved back and forth with tired expressions. The queen's chambers glowed faintly with protective light, but inside she remained unconscious, her heart kept alive only by machines. For the Seraphim Empire, this was unthinkable. Their ruler had never shown weakness before, and now she lay on the edge of life. Daniel Ward stood in silence near one of the great crystal doors. As a human guard, he was not the center of attention. Most of the other guards were Seraphim, tall, radiant, armored in shimmering plates. They looked like statues of living light. Daniel, by comparison, seemed small and plain, wearing only standard military gear. He was tolerated because the Empire had allowed humans to join the Guard as a symbol of trust, but many still whispered that humans were too young, too fragile, too simple to matter. Yet Daniel had sharp eyes. He saw things the others missed. He did not have advanced scanners or glowing armor, but he had something else, human instinct. That morning, alien healers worked endlessly around the Queen. They adjusted machines, ran glowing tools across her chest, and spoke in worried tones. "We do not understand," one said. "Her vitals flicker and fade. This condition does not exist among us." Daniel listened from the corner. He thought to himself, "You don't have a name for it." But humans do. He remembered again the look in his grandfather's eyes when he collapsed on Earth, clutching his chest. The same sudden weakness, the same helpless fall. Back then, the doctors had called it a heart attack. They had explained that too much strain, too much fat in the blood, or too much sugar could damage the heart. It was common on Earth, but here it was unknown. Daniel's thoughts grew sharper. Could it be the same for the Queen? Could she have suffered something so simple? Something that no Seraphim would ever expect? Later, Daniel was given a new duty: patrol the Queen's private halls. Few were trusted to enter this part of the palace, and he felt the weight of the responsibility. The halls were quiet, decorated with flowing banners of light. Guards stood motionless like statues, but Daniel moved slowly, observing everything. He noticed the smallest details, things others ignored. A faint smell of sweetness in the air, tiny crumbs near a table, and then he saw it again, an empty container tucked away behind ceremonial items. He recognized it instantly. It was a human snack box. His mind raced. The Queen had been eating human food. That explained the sweetness in the air, the crumbs, the containers. Perhaps she had grown fond of it. But her body was not human. What if the food that gave him pleasure was poison to her? Not in the sharp way of a toxin, but in the slow, hidden way of strain on the heart. Daniel crouched and studied the container. It was nothing fancy, just an ordinary Earth product, the kind one could buy at a simple marketplace. To the Seraphim, it would look harmless, almost meaningless. That was exactly why no one paid attention. He whispered to himself, "They're looking for advanced answers, but the truth may be something simple." Days passed. The Queen's condition did not improve. She remained unconscious, kept alive by machines. The Empire grew uneasy. Rumors spread across the stars. Was she poisoned? Was it an attack? Did the gods abandon her? The ministers held long meetings. Some argued for war preparations. Others blamed rival empires. The healers tested the Queen again and again, but found nothing unusual in her body. "Her heart simply fails," one admitted, shaking his head. But why? Daniel grew restless. He wanted to speak, but he feared no one would listen. What could a human guard offer that the greatest healers of the galaxy could not? To them, he was nothing more than a soldier. Still, his thoughts returned again and again to the food. He remembered the lessons of Earth doctors. He remembered soldiers in his unit collapsing after too much stress and poor health. The signs were all too familiar. Finally, he decided he could not stay silent forever. One evening, as the halls dimmed and only a few guards remained, Daniel approached one of the palace advisors, a Seraphim named Lyrae. She was tall and graceful, her eyes glowing softly with wisdom. Unlike many others, she sometimes spoke kindly to Daniel, asking about human customs and stories. He trusted her more than the rest. "Advisor," Daniel said quietly, "I believe I know something about the Queen's condition." Lyrae tilted her head. "You? What do you mean, human?" Daniel hesitated, but then explained. He spoke of his grandfather, of the way humans sometimes suffered when their hearts grew weak from food and stress. He explained what a heart attack was in simple words. On Earth it happens often. Our doctors know it well, I think. The Queen may have suffered the same. Lyray's glowing eyes narrowed with confusion. But such a thing does not exist among the Seraphim. Exactly, Daniel said. That's why no one here can see it. You're looking for poisons, for curses, for enemies. But maybe it's not that. Maybe it's something smaller, something hidden in what she eats. Lyray looked doubtful, but Daniel continued. I found human food in her chambers. Empty boxes, sweet smells. If she ate too much of it, maybe her heart could not handle it. For humans, we learn to control it. But for her kind, it may be deadly. Silence filled the hall. Lyray stared at him for a long moment. Finally, she said, You are suggesting that something as ordinary as human food brought our queen to this state? Daniel nodded firmly. Yes, what your machines cannot detect, a simple human doctor could explain. Lyray did not dismiss him immediately. That gave Daniel hope. She promised to consider his words, but she warned him to be careful. If you are wrong, many will not forgive you. And if you are right, some may still wish to keep it secret. The queen cannot appear weak. Daniel understood. This was more dangerous than he thought. The truth could shake the empire. That night he lay awake in his quarters. The palace was silent, but his mind was loud with questions. Should he push further? Should he gather more proof? If the queen's condition was truly caused by human food, then her life might depend on him. Yet if others discovered his suspicions, they might silence him. After all, who would want to admit that their mighty queen was brought down by something so simple? Daniel stared at the ceiling and whispered to himself, I have to know the truth. Even if no one else sees it, I have to find it. The next day he made a plan. While the healers worked, while the guards watched the doors, he would search quietly. He would look for more signs, containers, records, anything that proved the queen had been eating human food. If he was right, he could save her. If he was wrong, then at least he had tried. As he walked through the bright halls of the palace, Daniel felt the weight of the empire on his shoulders. He was just a human guard, one among thousands, but deep inside he knew something no one else did. The answer was not in advanced machines or glowing tools. It was in the simple truth of human experience. And if he was right, then humanity, the youngest and smallest of species, might hold the key to saving the greatest ruler in the galaxy. To be continued. The palace was quieter than usual. Even though thousands of servants and guards moved through its endless halls, a heavy silence hung in the air. Everyone knew why. Their queen, the eternal ruler of the Seraphim Empire, still lay weak and unconscious. The healers had done everything. They had scanned her body with machines that could read every cell. They had sung healing songs that bent light and energy. They had even called upon the ancient rites of the Seraphim, glowing circles of power that had never failed before. But none of it worked. The queen's chest still rose and fell slowly, her heart weak, her strength fading. No one understood. No one. Except Daniel Ward. Daniel moved quietly through the queen's private quarters. He was not supposed to be there alone, but he had been assigned to night patrol. Most of the other guards stood near the doors, watching the halls, leaving him free to look around. He opened drawers, checked shelves, and studied tables. His eyes moved not for grand things, but for the small and ordinary. While the Seraphim searched for poison needles, deadly gas, or hidden weapons, Daniel searched for crumbs, stains, and wrappers. And he found them. Behind a golden vase was a crumpled package. Beneath a couch was a rolled-up paper. In the corner of a chest was a shiny metallic box. All of them were human food containers. Daniel sat on the floor, placing them side by side. He read the names: sweet bars, sugar drinks, fried snacks. All were common on Earth, things a child might eat without a thought. He frowned. To him they were harmless in small amounts. But to the queen? To a body that had never known such things before? He remembered his grandfather again and the doctor's words, too much fat, too much sugar. It weakens the heart slowly until one day it fails. The Seraphim did not even have a word for this. Their bodies had never faced it before. But the queen had tried human food, maybe out of curiosity, maybe out of joy. And slowly, secretly, her heart had grown weaker and weaker until it finally failed in front of everyone. Daniel whispered to himself, it wasn't poison. It wasn't an attack. It was just food. The next day, Daniel approached advisor Lyray again. She listened with patience, her glowing eyes calm but serious. "You are certain of this?" she asked. Daniel nodded. "Yes, I've seen the signs before. Humans call it a heart attack. Our hearts fail when we eat too much of certain foods or live with too much stress. The Queen has been eating human food. That is the cause," Lyrae frowned. "But how can something so simple harm one as mighty as our Queen?" "Because her body is not human," Daniel explained. "Our foods were never meant for her kind. What is normal for us is dangerous for her. You see, sometimes it is not the strong poison that kills, but the small things no one notices." Lyrae stayed silent for a long time. Then she said, "If what you say is true, you may have saved the Queen, but if you are wrong, human, you risk much. Others will not believe so easily, and even if they do, they may choose to hide it. To admit that the Queen was harmed by something so ordinary would shame the Empire." Daniel knew she was right, but he also knew he could not remain silent. Later, Daniel decided to test his theory further. He spoke with human traders who sometimes visited the palace to deliver goods. One, a middle-aged merchant named Harris, admitted he had often provided Earth snacks for the Queen's court. "She loved them," Harris said with a nervous laugh. "Especially the sweet ones. We thought it was a great honor that she enjoyed our food." Daniel's jaw tightened. "How much did she eat?" The merchant hesitated. "More than we expected. We sent entire crates at a time. We never questioned it. Who would? It was for the Queen." That confirmed Daniel's suspicion. The Queen had been eating human food not as a small taste, but as a habit. And for her alien body, that habit had been deadly. But Daniel faced a new problem. How could he convince the Council of Ministers? They were powerful, proud, and unwilling to admit weakness. If he stood before them and said, "Why, the Queen nearly died from eating too much candy," they would laugh, or worse, silence him. Still, he had no choice. The Queen's life was worth the risk. He prepared carefully. He collected the empty containers he had found. He took notes of the Queen's schedule, marking when she had eaten the food and when she later complained of fatigue. He even wrote down medical knowledge from Earth, explaining how sugar and fat caused heart strain. That evening, he asked advisor Lyrae to arrange a small meeting. She agreed, though with hesitation. "The Council will not like this. Be careful with your words." The meeting was held in a chamber of silver walls and floating lights. 5 high ministers stood in a circle, their eyes glowing with authority. Daniel entered with Lyrae at his side, holding the small evidence he had gathered. "You are the human guard," one minister said coldly. "Why are we wasting time?" Daniel bowed respectfully. "Because I believe I know what happened to the Queen." The ministers exchanged looks. One laughed softly. "And our healers do not?" Daniel held up the containers. "She has been eating this human food. It is harmless to us, but to her kind it is dangerous. On Earth we have something called a heart attack. It comes when the heart grows weak from such things. The signs match perfectly. That is what happened to her." The chamber went silent. Some ministers looked shocked. Others looked offended. One stepped forward, his voice sharp. "You dare say our Queen, our eternal ruler, was brought down by snacks?" Daniel met his gaze firmly. "Yes, because the truth does not care about pride. The truth is the truth, no matter how small it seems." The ministers argued. Some dismissed Daniel at once. Others whispered that his theory, however strange, matched the evidence. But none wanted to accept it openly. To admit the Queen was harmed by human food would make her seem weak in the eyes of the galaxy. Lyrae defended Daniel. "He speaks sense. No one else has found an answer. And if we do not accept his words, the Queen may die." At last, one minister turned to Daniel and said, "Even if you are right, human, this truth is dangerous. If the people learn of it, they will lose faith. The Empire will tremble. Perhaps it is better if the cause remains hidden." Daniel clenched his fists. "Better for the Empire, maybe, but not for the Queen. If we don't change her diet, if we don't care for her in the right way, she will not live. Is pride more important than her life?" His words cut through the silence. That night, Daniel returned to his post with heavy thoughts. He had spoken the truth, but it was not enough. The ministers might still bury it. The healers might still search in the wrong direction, and the Queen's life still hung by a thread. Daniel stood by her chamber door, looking in at her resting figure. Her crown had been set aside, her eyes closed, her breathing faint. She looked less like an eternal ruler and more like a fragile being in need of help. He whispered softly, "I know what's hurting you. I just hope they'll listen before it's too late." Far beyond the palace walls, the Empire continued to shake with fear. Fleets were being prepared, alliances questioned, enemies watched. But inside those crystal halls, one human soldier carried a truth that could save the Queen, if only the Empire would let him. And so, the fate of billions rested not in glowing machines or powerful weapons, but in the simple knowledge of one human guard who had seen what others could not. To be continued. The palace corridors were alive with tension. Whispers floated through the halls like sparks in the air. The Queen's condition remained critical, and although some ministers secretly considered Daniel's theory, the idea that the mighty ruler could be weakened by something so simple filled others with anger and fear. Pride ran deep in the Seraphim Empire. No one wanted to admit that their eternal queen could be harmed by human food. Daniel walked carefully through the corridors, his human-sized footsteps quiet against the gleaming floors. Each time he passed a group of guards, he felt their eyes on him, not just observing, but judging. To most, he was insignificant. To a few, he was a threat, a human who dared suggest the Queen's weakness was real, and caused by something so ordinary, challenged their understanding of power and control. He carried the small evidence he had gathered, the empty snack containers, records of delivery, and his notes about the Queen's symptoms. In his mind, he reviewed everything he had learned so far. Each detail was precise. Each fact was a piece of the puzzle. And yet the question lingered. Would anyone truly listen? The next council meeting was called in secret. Only the most trusted ministers and advisors were present. Daniel had been invited, though reluctantly, to speak. As he entered the chamber, the glowing eyes of the council members fixed on him. There was tension in the air, a mixture of curiosity and suspicion. "You are human," said one minister coldly. "You dare suggest our queen was brought low by something so ordinary? Speak quickly or leave." Daniel held his head high. "I am human," he said, "but I have observed her. I have collected evidence. I have studied what she consumed. And I believe her heart attack was caused by food she ate. Earth food, sugar and fat that her body cannot process. Our machines cannot detect it because it is not a disease. It is a condition caused by what we consider normal. But for her it is deadly." The chamber erupted in murmurs. Some laughed, others shook their heads. One minister, a towering seraphim with golden eyes, slammed his hand on the table. "You insult our queen. You claim she is weak because of something so small. You dare question her eternal strength?" Daniel did not flinch. "I am not questioning her strength. I am saving her life. Pride and power do not matter if she dies. The cause is real and the solution is simple. Change her diet, reduce her intake, and care for her properly. If you ignore it, she will not survive." There was a long silence. Some ministers were too shocked to speak. Others whispered among themselves. Daniel realized the danger of his position. If he angered the wrong person, he could be expelled or worse. Certain ministers might choose to protect their image rather than the Queen. Before he could say more, another voice joined the discussion. It was Advisor Lyrae. "Listen to him," she said firmly. "I have watched his observations. They are accurate. The evidence he brings matches what I have seen. If we do not act, the Queen will die. Pride will mean nothing if the throne falls empty." Her words cut through the tension, but not all the ministers agreed. A few stood and accused Daniel of disrespect. "He is a human," one said. "We cannot trust him over our healers and our ancient knowledge." Daniel replied calmly, "Your healers have done their best. They have used every tool, every spell, every machine, but none has found the cause. I am offering a solution. That is all I ask you to consider." Even as he spoke, Daniel noticed subtle movements in the chamber. Some of the older ministers were signaling guards with their hands. He realized the danger. If they decided he was a threat, they could remove him quietly. A human alone in an alien council was vulnerable. He swallowed. This was a test, not only of truth but of courage. He had prepared evidence and explanation, but would it be enough to save the Queen and keep himself safe? Before fear could take hold, he remembered why he had spoken. The Queen's life depended on honesty. If he failed, no one else might try. He straightened, his voice steady. "I will speak truth. If you dismiss it, her life is at your hands." The debate continued long into the night. Finally, a compromise emerged. Some ministers would secretly support Daniel's plan, ensuring the Queen's food was adjusted. Others would pretend ignorance, protecting their pride publicly. The Queen's diet would be controlled, her care monitored and her heart given a chance to recover. Daniel felt relief, but he also knew the risk was not over. Certain ministers might still act behind the scenes. Some might consider his knowledge dangerous, and the Queen remained unconscious, fragile, and unaware of the human who fought for her life. That evening, Daniel returned to his post outside her chambers. He had permission to approach the Queen personally, to observe her and to ensure her care matched his findings. The room was quiet except for the soft hum of machines. The Queen's breathing was shallow but steady. Her hands lay gently on the bed, her crown set aside. She looked small, vulnerable, but still regal. Daniel knelt nearby, careful not to disturb the healers who worked silently. "I know what's hurting you," he whispered. "I will not let anyone ignore it. You will recover." Over the next few days, Daniel observed small changes. The Queen's attendants replaced all human foods with carefully balanced alternatives. Sugary drinks and fried snacks were removed entirely. Machines were adjusted to monitor heart function more closely, and Daniel suggested small exercises adapted for her alien physiology. Slowly, her color returned. Her breathing steadied, her chest rose more evenly, and faint energy began to return to her limbs. It was small, almost imperceptible, but it was enough to give hope. Daniel could not help but feel a quiet pride. The Seraphim had relied on powerful machines, magic, and ancient knowledge for centuries. But it was human observation, simple, careful, and persistent, that had finally found the key. However, danger still lurked. Certain ministers were unhappy. Pride and fear whispered in their ears, reminding them that admitting the Queen's vulnerability could weaken the Empire's image. Some began plotting, quietly discussing ways to discredit Daniel or silence him. Daniel sensed it. Though he had the Queen's life improving, he was now a target. The human guard who had discovered the truth was both a hero and a threat. Some feared that if the truth spread, the galaxy would see the Seraphim as vulnerable and enemies would attack. Others worried about the embarrassment. Daniel accepted the risk. Truth is stronger than fear, he thought. If the Queen dies because of silence, pride means nothing. One night, as Daniel patrolled the quiet halls, he noticed a shadow moving near the council chambers. He recognized the gestures, subtle, controlled, and dangerous. Someone was attempting to manipulate events quietly. A small group of guards, loyal to the ambitious ministers, were moving in ways that suggested confrontation. Daniel's instincts kicked in. He approached carefully, his hand on his weapon, but he did not attack. He only observed. He knew that force would create chaos. Instead, he memorized faces, positions, and movements. If danger came, he would be ready, and it did. The next day, one minister publicly questioned Daniel's motives. "How do we know this human is not lying? How do we know he did not place these containers to trick us?" Daniel remained calm. "The evidence is real. I did not plant it. The Queen's condition is real. If you ignore it, she will die. I will not allow her life to be put at risk for pride or fear." Some ministers were furious. Some were impressed. But none could deny the Queen's improvement. Slowly, her vital signs grew stronger. Machines recorded steady beats. The healers began to smile cautiously. Even the skeptical ministers had to admit, she was recovering. By the end of the week, the Queen's recovery became undeniable. Her color returned. Her chest rose steadily, and faint energy returned to her movements. The council could no longer deny the human's wisdom. Daniel stayed at her side, a quiet guardian, observing, recording, and guiding the adjustments to her care. The Empire had faced a crisis unlike any before, but for the first time, a human, one overlooked and underestimated, had guided their solution. In the halls, whispers began. The Queen lives because of the human. Some smiled at the idea. Others frowned, but slowly, respect began to replace disbelief. Daniel knew the danger was not over. There would always be those who doubted humans, who feared admitting the truth and who might resent his role. But for now, the Queen's life had been saved, and that was enough. To be continued.